Hello and welcome to Vibrational Doorways. Now, we can't really call this a book review because these are my own books. So what we'll call this is a walkthrough so that I can show you in a bit more detail what is in these two particular books that I have written on the subject of energy boundaries, how to protect and affirm your personal space. And starting with volume 1, and I'd just like to also say that the information in these books has come out of my first 50 years on this planet. So working with issues in terms of families, issues in terms of friends, situations, especially work situations, and the realization that a lot of our issues are related to boundaries and boundary issues, so that if you can actually establish firm and yet flexible, because we don't want solid boundaries all the time, we need sort of like some given our boundaries, but if you can establish appropriate boundaries, then a lot of the issues that we face actually change. And that's what I was trying to do with these two books, to capture a lot of the learning and a lot of the energy learning that I've found from strengthening and working with my own boundaries, my own boundary issues. So the first one, volume 1, as you can see, and just going to talk you through it. So starting here, introduction to volume 1. So the introduction puts things into perspective, and something I just want to point out, it's Cindy Dale, who's also written a book on energy boundaries, and she makes this observation that 60 to 70% of issues, in her opinion, have some level of boundary issue, or some component of a boundary issue in them. And I found that to be true as well. So many of the issues that we face in life, somewhere there is a boundary issue in many of them, whether it's a work situation, financial situation, a love relationship, a family relationship. So the whole question of appropriate boundaries is threaded through so many human issues, and that's what I'm sort of like setting up in the introduction. So the introduction then goes through protection and support, active and passive, and this comes very much from an ICGT, the Institute of Gem and Crystal Therapists perspective, but the difference between protection and support. So protection is when you need to protect your energy, support when you need additional support but maybe not protection. Active and passive, different approaches. So an active approach is where you actually have to do something. A passive approach is when you can carry something, or something is supporting your energy so that you don't need to consciously be doing something. So this chapter goes into the differences in more detail. And as ICGT teach, it's best to have a range of different methods, some active, some passive, some which are very protection, others a bit more support. Here, importance of energy protocols. So this chapter is going into the reasons beneath the surface why boundaries issues occur. And what I do in this one is actually take you through a scenario between two ladies, one called Joyce and one called Glenda, and explain how on the surface they can be all smiles and very pleasant, and yet if you go deeper from the conscious level into the unconscious level, if you then look at it from the unconscious mind, there can be a lot of issues lurking beneath the surface that are undermining effective boundaries between two people. And then, building on that, we're going to personal demons. Because one of the things I found is that you need to know your own energy, you need to know your own weaknesses, your own personal demons, because it's the demons within yourself, the weaknesses, the buttons that allow people to push those buttons and also therefore get beneath your boundaries. Okay, so personal demons explores how people use fear or guilt or worry, anxiety, loneliness, rejection, jealousy, to turn someone around to sort of, in a sense, if you can make them afraid, you can manipulate them. If you can make them anxious, you can manipulate them. So it's going into this whole question of how people use our personal demons, our weak emotions, if you could say, our fears, our anxieties, to manipulate us. And then what we can do. So these are antidotes, crystal antidotes for anger, desperate need, envy, fear, grief, guilt, jealousy, loneliness, rejection, shame, unloved, and worry and anxiety. Because these are all areas where if we're not conscious of what's going on and we're not able to turn those energies around ourselves, then we are open to manipulation. And that undermines our personal space. Here we go into this chapter, into the heart protector meridian. Now there are certain elements of our own energy field which are designed to protect us. And one of the biggest ones of those is the heart protector meridian. So we go into this in quite detail, and we touch upon some other meridians as well, but very much into this in quite detail just to explain how it works, and it comes up in a lot of different areas of our life. And then we're into layouts for healing the heart protector meridian, crystal layouts, and also different ways you can, in a sense, reprogram your own heart protector meridian to start working effectively. The way I describe the heart protector meridian, it's a bit like a castle drawbridge. You want it to be lowered to all those people that you want to be in close relationship, you want to be intimate with, but at the same time you want it raised, closed, locked to all those people who would try and harm you. So this chapter is going into the heart protector meridian, one of the most important areas of our energy field, which helps protect us in quite detail. Now here there's a chapter on a man called Paul Brunton, who was very influential in spiritual writing back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. And why I've included that, because the way he approached psychic protection, and he went to India, Egypt, the Himalayas. He sort of spent time with some really spiritual masters, enlightened masters. But some of the things he said about psychic protection are really simple to do. So I wanted to include a chapter of, okay, simple stuff. And so he's got some really easy, simple things to just shift your energy. Now this is a technique called the golden shield that comes from, I got this one from a book by Joseph Ostrom, and that book isn't very available at the moment. So I've written up about it. I've written up about how Joseph Ostrom found it. I have found this, the golden shield, to be amazingly effective for myself and also my students. And also we discovered through working with it that it has certain knock-on effects which are very beneficial to know about, and it's a very easy one to get the stones for. So we're going to this in quite detail. Next, knowing your comfort zones. So once again, one of the ways that people can undermine your energy boundaries and your personal boundaries is by knocking you out of your comfort zone, because by knocking you out of your comfort zone they actually push you into anxiety. So this is one of the ways, and this occurs an awful lot in business and large organisations. So knowing your comfort zones and how comfort zones work, and being able to get yourself back into a non-anxious state, to reconnect with a sense of comfort, is a very useful skill to have. So we go into this, some detail again. Understanding psychology of flow has a lot to do with comfort zones, and then also knowing your moon sign. Astrology is linked to this whole area of comfort zones. And then we go into crystal antidotes that help you re-establish a feeling of comfort, of security, and turn anxiety around. And then also, if you haven't got stones, these are the affirmations from John Diamond's work that also help to establish a sense of comfort and also turn around anxiety. And there's a crystal layout from Sue and Simon's systems that also works that way. And then we come into a large chapter which I called energy breathing. And in this, we actually go a bit more into the theory of how our energy works and how someone can undermine us and how we can bring ourselves back into balance and are able to protect our own energy field. And we're drawing upon the work of American scientists and what the experiments they've done, and then we take it through into Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, so we're bringing some of that in. So energy breathing is sort of explaining that just as you breathe in and you breathe out, so our energy field is breathing in and breathing out. So we can't put a wall around us, because if we did that, it would be a bit like holding our breath, and we can't do that. But there are strategies to ensure that the air we're breathing, the energy we're breathing through our aura, is non-contaminated by other people. So that's what this chapter is all about. Now, just run from it. As they say in the martial arts, the best way to avoid a fight is walk away. So this is actually bringing up the whole question of some situations it's better to just walk away from, if at all possible. So there's some useful advice there, and also there's some useful advice in this particular chapter: psychic groups, mind, body, spirit fairs, therapists, psychics and gurus. Because psychic groups, fairs, therapists, psychics and gurus can be great and wonderful and uplifting, but there can be areas where there's a lot of psychic manipulation going on. So they're not all love and light, they're not all positive and empowering, some of them are very manipulative. So this chapter goes into these areas and explains what possibly might be happening and what you have to look out for. Which takes us on to dragon points. Now this comes, I believe this comes from creative kinesiology, and it passed to Sue and Simon Lilly in ICGT, and they worked it up as a crystal technique. It doesn't need any specific crystals. It can work with whatever crystals you have, but it is an amazingly powerful and effective technique for getting your body to release any psychic manipulation, hooks, cords, whatever, that is influencing you. So we go into this, there's two actual dragon point layouts. So we go into the theory behind it. So this explains a bit in terms of what's happening in the aura. So this is the dragon point layout 1, dragon point layout 2, and also there's a third one for clearing old vows and promises. Because one of the things that you'll find is that we may vow, this is a classic one for, say, the 1950s and marriage vows, where the woman was meant to love, honour, obey until she dies, and then of course they get divorced or he starts cheating or whatever. And the vow, though, that she took very sincerely at the time is still active. So there's a lot of vows and promises that we make that were felt right at the time, but we need to sort of let go of because life has changed. So there's a dragon point layout to actually help us release that using different strategies. So in life, when you are dealing with some sort of energy protection issue, sometimes it's about finding the right strategy for that situation. it's the classic thing, you don't always have to have a hammer to crack a nut. Sometimes using a lot of force is counterproductive, so it's finding the right strategy. So this is about finding the right strategy, and then we go into protection and sanctuary nets. So these are crystal nets to put around the body to help your energy cope with some sort of manipulation that's going on. But they use different strategies. So this creates a shield. This layout is very much to do with invisibility, making yourself invisible to the energy. This is one to make yourself transparent to the energy so it passes through you. This is one using crystals around the body to help transform the energy if it touches your aura. This one reflects it back. This one is in a sense dissolving the energy. And this one is coherence, trying to make the energy coherent. And this final one, perspective, changing your perspective onto the whole situation. Now this one gets a whole chapter to itself, the electromagnetic reset now. And something that I've found, and the people I've worked with have found, is that because our energy field is distorted by a lot of the electromagnetic pollution around us, it's from computers, from laptops, from mobile phones, from washing machines, microwaves, basically modern life. It puts our aura under a lot of stress, and therefore it's harder to hold our personal boundaries. So this layout, crystal layout, is very, very effective at getting our aura to reset and relax. And what we found, and some of the people I've worked with this have actually called this the turnaround net, because somebody who's finding it hard to hold boundaries, I know one lady who was in a very negative relationship with a man, and when this was done on her, her ability to hold the boundaries increased immensely. In fact, she was able to stand up to the man and turn things around. And there's something about, once your body is able to establish the correct electromagnetic relationship with the planet Earth, then a lot of the other issues that you're dealing with sort of like come into balance. So this is a very important one to do on a regular basis, or whenever you feel the need. So that takes you through this particular layout, and there's a secondary layout if you didn't have the other stones, so we've got that one. Now this chapter is paradoxical, but it's a word from the psychic vampires. So basically it's a chapter that goes into the fact that some psychic vampires actually say that, well, we do what we do because we have to, because our constitution is such that we need to feed on other people's energies. So that chapter is actually going, okay, let's look at that question. You know, let's look at it from the perspective of the psychic vampires and say if this is actually true or not. And sort of like it goes into that and, you know, gives you some advice. Then we look at devices. There are some people who produce devices, not just crystals, but actual devices to protect the aura. And there are quite a few of them. Now I can't sort of like suggest what is good and not so good, but what I've done is I put through device questions. So if you're thinking about purchasing a device, and some of them can be quite expensive, I put together questions to ask to see if it's going to fit you and your situation. This one is evoking divine energies for protection, this chapter, which is what some people actually do. They call upon a divine power, maybe an angel or a knight and master, to protect them. And that does have positive benefits, but if you are going to use that approach, then there's some other things you need to be aware of. And then going into the whole unconditional love and forgiveness. So some people can be hurt very, very badly, but they keep on forgiving. There is a problem with that. There's several problems. So I've gone into this whole thing of, okay, you're not protecting yourself, but you keep forgiving the other person, and looking at it that way. And then that's it. For this, volume 1, that's it. But one thing I would like to say is that as well as the hard copy, and we'll go a little bit into that in a minute, this book has been turned into 3 ebooks that are available from Amazon. So Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 all contain the material that is in this hard, not hard copy, I should say, this is physical book. So that's Volume 1. So now I'm going to just gently walk you through Volume 2. So in Volume 2 I have even more information, but going into other areas. So Introduction, learning from life lessons, because one of the things that I found is that our boundary issues are also entwined with the lessons that we're learning in life, because we're all learning lessons. So that's some ideas of how to approach boundary issues from a life lesson perspective. So that's what we're doing in this particular chapter. So it's quite a large information. The next thing, the map of consciousness, from the work of David R. Hawkins. And in the map of consciousness you've got this table, and anything below here is disempowering, and anything above here is empowering. So for example, we've got shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger and pride all disempower us on an energy level. So why that is so, I explain in this. I call it energy economics, but why that is so, I explain. And so anything or anyone that tries to keep you locked into one of these is disempowering you and undermining your boundaries. So once again, going into the whole subject in some depth. And then we go into things you can do about it. This is a Sue and Simon net called the Persian Ironword net, which is absolutely brilliant. Yeah? So, moving on, toxic relationships. So, one of the things that really puts our relationships, say that again, something that really tests our boundaries is our relationships, and some of our relationships are completely toxic, you know, especially where, you know, we're trying to love the other person, but you know they are very, very unlovable. So toxic relationships, I kind of sort of like explain the whole question of what's going on between different people on an energy level. As you can see, these explaining sort of mismatched energies between people. I also touch upon the whole soulmate question, which is a very very deep and perplexing subject, but we touch upon that in this chapter, because soulmates can be the best thing in the world, but can also be the most manipulative kind of relationships if you allow your eyes to become clouded by a reality that just isn't there. So going into relationships, and then we go into a chapter on protection from group energies and egregores. So sometimes it isn't just a one-to-one relationship where we're being undermined and manipulated, but it's a whole group energy thing. And you'll find this so much at organizations, businesses, in the workplace, especially where, and this is sad to say, where an organization dumps all of its toxic energy on that one person, in a sense a black sheep. So it can be a black sheep within a family, but it can also be a black sheep in a business or an organization. And in those situations it can actually be harder to maintain your boundaries, because you're not in a sense, trying to protect yourself against one person, you're protecting yourself against 50 people, or a large group. So this chapter goes into the whole question of, okay, you're under some kind of manipulation by a large group of people. How can you deal with that? And there are ways to do it. And I actually draw upon real life situations where people that I've worked with were on the sharp end of nasty group energies. So, going into group energies, and this chapter is in a sense, the theoretical chapter in the book, but it draws upon the work of 2 different Russian scientists and this whole question of photonic energy. So one of them found that our DNA actually stores photon energy, and another found that it's possible for one person to steal the photonic energy from somebody else if they can push them into a low vibrational state. Which, if you think about it, is what is happening if people are kept in fear or anxiety or worry, which is why corporations and politicians and abusive partners try and manipulate people to keep them into a low vibrational state, because then it's very easy to raid their energy of this vitality. So this goes into more of the theory of what I call higher and lower economics. And as you can see, there's quite a lot in this particular chapter. But what I wanted to do is give people a very good grounding in terms of this whole area, and looks at it from lots of different perspectives. And that's going into the whole, in a sense, my perspective on the science of it. This is more on the Russian scientists. And then boundary nets. So crystal layout to affirm the energy boundaries around base chakra, orange, so the sacral, the heart chakra, and white. And this is actually where I'm sort of drawing upon the work of Cindy Dale. But what I've done is I've taken some of her ideas and worked them up into actual crystal layouts to protect the energy field. And also earth element, water element, fire element, and air element. And so the stones are usually very easy to get hold of. You need 4 of each for these. So here it's 4 amethysts, 4 garnets, 4 rhodonites. But placing them around the body in that particular way helps to put a protected boundary around those particular chakras. And then you're not giving your energy away. So these are the boundary nets. And then invisibility and self-sabotage. A chapter on invisibility and self-sabotage. What I found is people will use invisibility as a protection, because if you make yourself invisible, then who can find you? The bullies can't find you, the abusive people can't find you. The problem with invisibility is that when you want to be visible, it's very hard to switch the invisibility off and become visible again. So people go through life realizing that what they want never happens because they're invisible to all the good stuff. Once again, self-sabotage. You can actually self-sabotage yourself. You can sabotage your energy field so it never reaches a certain level of energy. So this chapter goes into that whole question of invisibility, self-sabotage, but also gives you antidotes for the chakras, and here for the chakras and the meridians, to help you turn this around. And it's also linked to the chakras themselves and the meridians issues. I found this one to be very, very effective in terms of because this also touches into work and relationships. If you want a relationship, if you want a cool job, you've got to be visible to the people that you want to attract. So switching your visibility back on again is a good thing to do when it's appropriate. Positive indifference and positive selfishness. positive indifference comes from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, i.e. sometimes it's important to be indifferent to a situation because people can manipulate you through your caring, and also it's okay to be selfish. So people manipulate you through your guilt and through your caring. So this goes into this whole interesting area, and gives you layouts as well. Glamours and the pain body. Glamours touches into the work of Alice A. Bailey, her book Glamour World Problem, and I don't really want to go too much into glamours, but basically they are unconscious clouds of energy that people can be manipulated by. And so it goes, this whole thing goes, chapter goes into this in some area, and also give you ways to work with them. Okay? And then going on, after glamours, we go into ancestral healing and thought essence. Once again, we could be here for ages if I start talking about thought essence, but it's something that I found is very prevalent in families where there is a lot of manipulation going down through the generations, and how people control each other, and that actually, if you remove the thought essence, and there's a very simple way of doing it, that individual is no longer being controlled by the ancestral energy. Here, Chiron, Glamour and the no boundary space. So Chiron is a centaur from Greek mythology. It's also a planetoid between between Saturn and Uranus, and this whole question of what we can fix and what we can't fix is an area that is where we can be manipulated. So we go into that particular area in some depth and give you practical ways of working with it. And finally, you can do me no harm. I think this is the final chapter. You can do me no harm, an interesting story that, a real life story that comes from the world of kinesiology, which is very challenging, but actually I've found to be a very protective way of working, because it's all about levels and realizing we're not as trapped as we thought ourselves to be. So that is volume 2, and volume 2 is also translated into the following ebooks: volume 1, volume 2 and volume 3. Now what I have to say is that this particular Energy Boundaries physical books, the 2 physical books, I had printed up for my students. I have been teaching for a while now. I hope to again, but at the moment I've decided that it's much better to put these books out and allow people within the Vibrational Doorways community to purchase them. So if you want to purchase the physical books, they're available on this link. And also be aware that there's, for each of them, each book, there is 3 options based on your location in the world. So you choose the one that is applicable to you, and that price has the book price in it, and it also has the postage and packaging for UK or Europe or rest of the world. So you choose the one that is appropriate for you. But the thing is, there's just over 80 of books available, physical books of volume 1, and just over 80 of volume 2. Once they're gone, they are gone. The ebooks on Amazon, yeah, they're going to stay there. And it may be more appropriate for you to buy the ebook. But if you did want to purchase the physical books from me, and of course I'll be signing them as well, then be aware there's only 80 or so left. And once they're gone, they are gone. Okay? They won't be reprinted in this particular format or the density of information contained in them if I did ever get around to publishing them again. So the physical books are going to be a rarity. So if I become world famous and you have one of these books, then it will be quite a talking point. So like I said, because I'm not teaching at this present moment, and I won't be teaching these type of courses again for quite some time, it seemed to me better that than having these books in storage, that I just allow them out to the world so that people can benefit from the information in them. So if you want a physical book, you go to this link. And if you prefer to purchase the Amazon Kindle books, then go on to your local Amazon, whether it's in America, UK, Australia, Canada, wherever, and it's Brian D. Parsons, Energy Boundaries, and it's the one of 6, and like I said, I've shown you which books cover which Kindle books cover which physical books. Okay, I hope all of that made sense. I hope there was something in there that you will find useful. And like I said, I've taken a vast chunk of the experience that I've hard-won experience from my first 50 years of life, and put them in these books and putting them out there so that, and hopefully in a very practical, energetic way, to also give you ways to deal with these issues. I mean, if you're an energy therapist, I would suggest you really want these books, because it'll give you a lot of techniques that you can apply. Okay, thank you very much for listening to my walkthrough of my 2 books. I hope there's something useful there, and I hope to see you again on one of these videos in the future. Thanks and goodbye.